something I want to mention before I finish up is that one of the feelings I had when I was out of my body in this universal part where I was with my guide was I had this enormous gratitude and love for what all of this was, and it was so deep, and there was a level of almost like I could feel my own meekness, and you do want to kind of bow to it in a way. I didn't have the feeling of like I need to bow, but it's almost like where something is so amazing, you almost just collapse to it because you love it so much. And yes, I did have that, and yet at the same time, what that is, what the divine, what God is, I felt all of that more than I could ever feel it coming back to me, and feeling that level of love and gratitude for me. And it was for me personally, for exactly who I am at every level of me and everything I've ever been through, beyond even what I know of in this lifetime. And it was so grateful to me and loved me so much. And I almost felt as if it was bowing to me. And so there was this mutual adoration and love. And that also helps me because coming back into the world, I know not only to lighten up, but I know the level of love. There's this gratitude for us because in a way, it's like when we become embodied in the physical, we're learning through our senses and through suffering and joy and all these different levels. We're picking up on so much information, learning how to be balanced, evolving in the mind. And as we do this, everything that happens to us is in a way, it comes together, and what we call the divine is able to receive that information and our learning and our growth. And that's part of the whole intelligence of why it's intelligent, why it knows, why it is, we think, oh, it's beyond us, it's so much more intelligent. And yet, it's like I understood that it was saying, but this is because of those willing to go down into the body. And I understood that their feeling to us was almost like, you guys are the superheroes who go into the physical body and you experience the suffering, and we have nothing but gratitude and love, and we wish for you and hope for you. So I really feel more compassion toward myself now and toward others. And as far as judging people in my life, where I used to think, oh, well, how do I see this person? And how do I see that person? And what about this situation? Oh, is that wrong or right? Now I just know there's no way I can know everything. I can't look at any situation or one person and know it all. You know, I can choose what works best for me, what seems to click with me the most and help me be the healthiest and most balanced, but I can't really judge things the way that I did before. I don't know. I still can say, you know, I don't know anything, because as long as I'm in that space where I keep my frame of mind open, and I kind of think of the symbol of a cup or a chalice maybe, and as long as I keep that continually empty, it just keeps filling and more comes in. And so it's become very important to me that even with my experience, I hold it in me, and yet at the same time, I still kind of like to remain just like that. My prayer, as far as what changed with me, if I go into some quick details of, you know, what changed, everything changed. I didn't have anything about me that didn't change after my experience.
We're so used to thinking in terms of hierarchies. The healer is more important than the addict. The teacher is more important than the arms dealer. These hierarchies of value are not real. I don't care how dull or weird or messed up we think our lives are here in the physical world. I can assure you that all of us are having a valuable experience. And I don't care how special we think we are. We are each uniquely special, every single one of us. Our experience extends and enhances everything that exists. We are each infinitely creative beings having an amazing experience just by being here. From the perspective out of body, it was understood that it takes some skill to even exist in the physical body, in the physical world. It takes a skill of focus to maintain consciousness within a physical body, and then to participate in a collective, cooperative, creative experience of being in this physical world. So we're all amazing. We're all jet pilots flying 50 feet off the deck, upside down. We are very cool. Just by showing up here. Just by showing up. In this non-physical state of being, there's a profound sense of belonging. Everything about everyone that exists is not only accepted, but admired, respected, recognized, and celebrated. There's a cooperative co-passion for being that permeates everything that I experienced. Everything there is effortless. It is just so easy. It's blissful, and it's filled with a joy that is so fundamental, it's only really remarkable from outside of that state of being. So imagine that everything you have ever thought, imagined, experienced, dreamed, or created was recognized to be valuable. To you, yourself, and to everyone else, to all that exists. What was known to me, what was so basic as to be assumed, was just that we are each intrinsically valuable. And everything we experience matters, not just to ourselves, but to each other and to all that is.
Beautiful, kind of like an English garden. Everything was manicured and beautiful flowers and trees. And the grass, it was the greenest grass I've ever seen. Absolutely beautiful gardens. And what happens is this is where people who come back from a lifetime have reunions. And these reunions are with people who have crossed before them. Parents, grandparents, friends, siblings, children, people that they have known in their life. And all the people they know on the other side are there to greet them. And the reason is because having a lifetime on Earth and finishing a life is a really big deal. It's a huge accomplishment to everyone on the other side that you actually finished a life and now you're back home.
And here's a part of it that I also think is very important for us today to realize. We find it, even those of us who have had this experience, have a tendency, or who have brushed it in some way, out of body experiences, or just that kind of divine intervention that cannot be called anything else. We tend to think that we are at the bottom of some order of spiritual exaltation. And what it's been very difficult for me to grasp and accept is that I am the cutting edge of this. They are my workers, my team. I wouldn't be here without them. But the choices and the creative work are mine to do. We are the cutting edge. The spiritual beings that support us, that surround us, that serve us, that try to help us get through this, do just that. They serve and support us. If we give our power away to them and believe that they are more powerful than we because they're not in bodies, then we're doing the same thing we did for generations after generation in giving all our power away to some distant concept of a God. Every attempt we make to give away our power slows down the process that we are here for. The process that we are here for is to claim our power and to create new possibilities with it.
And I was part of all things that had happened somehow. I was connected to this, and I could understand it. I could understand so many things so rapidly and completely that there is no way to explain this to anybody. And at some point, I realized I would have to go back. And I pleaded not to return. And I was told, well, you must return. And these beings around me of light indicated you have to return. There's very important reasons, I don't recall what they said. I don't know what the reasons were. But the next thing that happened was very powerful to me and has always stayed with me, as has the whole experience. Although this sounds egotistical, I don't know how to say it other than what happened. Millions, or at least thousands of these light beings surrounded me and began to sing. And when I say sing, they were making music of a beauty that was improvisational and full and complete, like I've never heard in this world. And they were basically praising me.
There's the spirit world in which we all come from. Hell would be, I tell people a lot, I don't believe in hell. I was married before, but I don't believe in hell. But it's, earth can be hell and earth can be heaven. That's basically what you make it. If you're a bad person, you're not going to go to the upper echelons of the heaven world, of the spirit world. You will go to the light, but you're not going to go to the very top. You're going to, you're going to be in these areas here, but you're not going to go all the way to the top. Well, we are heroes for coming here to begin with. We choose to come here, and we choose to come here for soul growth. There are other dimensions and there are other planets and galaxies as to which we can go to for soul growth. The Earth is an emotional planet. Everything we do here is based off of our emotions. So, and to think you're going to get it in one lifetime too is kind of crazy, because you're not going to figure out all the different aspects and ebb and flows of your emotions. So we come here and we learn our emotions. We are given free will too. So, and that's a big difference there. We can say yay or nay, whichever, and that's free will. So we came here for our lessons and we chose to come here.
I remember just thinking, oh, it's so simple, that I looked around and realized I was safe. I looked around and I could see below me there was faces, people looking up at me. And I flew down. In that realm, you kind of glide and fly, and it's not, you don't walk as we do here. And I flew down and they greeted me as though they knew every aspect of my life, and I was some kind of champion, some kind of, yeah, it was just mind-blowing to be known.
If we looked at each other as souls, the magnificence that we are as souls, taking on this really hard ride here. Earth is rough. It's hard here. And we take it on and we take these suits, some of them were disabled and, learning disabilities and abuse and starvation and all the things, just trying to make the rent every month is, an awful feat for each one of us to accomplish every single day, to get out of that bed with our hurts and everything else. We're all beautiful, magnificent souls that have taken on a role for whatever their spiritual reasoning, for their purpose, for their mission. So, let's not try not to be so mean to each other.
You will look at yourself from this point. If God couldn't show up today, and God sent you in the events that you are about to watch, what difference did God make in the lives of the events that you're taking place? It's a heavy responsibility, but that's what we're doing here. If God couldn't show up today, and you had to be the difference that God made in these situations of what you're about to see, what difference did God make? But not only that, I literally became every person that I have ever encountered. I got to feel the direct results of my interaction. I got to feel the pain, frustration, humiliation, anger, anxiety that I had inflicted on thousands of people, not just a few people. What a jerk. And I can promise you this, it wasn't a good day for God that day. Because if I was supposed to make a difference, I can understand why fear and hatred and animosity toward what we think of why me, God, why me. I can see how people feel like that if I was to represent it. After I had the panoramic life review, and I had to sit down and reflect what a complete jerk I was, and what a failure I was as a spiritual being, We are not poor, pitiful, struggling humans trying to have mystical experiences. We are great and awesomely powerful and mighty spiritual beings trying to have human experiences, and we're just not real good at it yet, but we're attempting. That psychology must be in place. We must take that as the basis of how we look at ourselves, so that we know how to open up. We can't keep looking at ourselves as struggling, stupid little humans. We can't, because it's just not, it's wearing too thin. It's not applicable. We are not that. Yeah. We are responsible for making this world a great place to live in. We are responsible for sharing our inner knowledge and our spiritual selves with those that are around us. And why? I don't really know all the reasons for it, but I know that what we do here works in a microcosm so that spirituality can watch these events and take from this experience and help evolve other worlds and other universes. This is like the microcosm of how spirit can react in a mental, material, physical matter. All of a sudden, once this was over, and I was trying to learn how to forgive myself for what I had done, and I just wasn't able to do it because I didn't think I deserved that forgiveness. I just honestly didn't think it. But yet no one ever judged me. Then this being and I, we traveled. We began to move through tones and frequencies and hues and energies. And it was so wondrous what we were going through. And I kept getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And I could feel more power. I came to a place where I knew I was all-knowing, that I had the ability to understand and conceive of all things, and which is a stark difference from who I am now, what an idiot that I am. But we are, as spiritual beings, are capable of conceiving all things and operating in dimensions that we don't even grip. We are heroes. How you know that you're a hero? If you've seen what I've seen and seen who we are, because no one listening is any different than me, than I am. I know who we are and what we look like. We are radiant, powerful beings who, because we chose and were chosen to come here as heroes, we come where angels don't fear to tread. We come and we hold this ground and we evolve in a way that's like a Nautilus commercial, no pain, no gain. But we're here because we chose to come. We know the events that'll be played out, and we play them out so that the world that we live in has a value system in it that is spiritual in a physical, mental dimension.
I'm probably the only spirit to make it to heaven and actually be mad. I was like, what? I'm wrong? Because, you know, in my life, I was a devout atheist. There had been so much dense energy that had happened to me in my life. There was no way that I was going to believe in a creator that would allow all those things to happen to me. And so I just stayed hidden from God, source, the universe, because it was just easier. And so when I made my way into this space, I was told that I was a divine spiritual warrior, that I had chosen to come to Earth and to live this life, and that I had chosen all of the adversity that I had experienced. The first part of my life was like boot camp, and the second part of my life would be carrying out the mission, and that I had to come back to Earth to do that. And I was like, oh, I'm not going back. You know, like being in that space of eternity was the first time that I ever felt whole. My whole life, all of these experiences had happened to me that just kept fracturing me into these little shards of glass. Like every piece of me was so broken. And when I entered the space of eternity, it was like this amazing glue that just made me into this beautiful mosaic. And I was finally whole and complete. And there was no way that I was returning. And I said, I'm going to grab my pajamas and a bowl of popcorn. I'll watch the show from up here. No way. You cannot make me go back. I will not go back. And they said, okay, let us take you through the details of your pre-birth plan. It'll probably help you get through the rest of your life because you're going back. So they took me, it looked a lot like a video game in my mind's eye, which could have a lot to do with the generation that I was born in. So this man presented himself to me. He was wearing a plaid blazer and a fedora, and we were inside of a grocery store, and we had an empty grocery cart, and he said, pick your life. On the walls of the grocery aisles, it looked like there were these cereal boxes, and every cereal box had a life experience on it. And I just remember like being this little orb of light, and I was like, well, if I'm going to Earth, I'm going to Earth. And I just start grabbing every cereal box I can get my figurative hands on. There's no body there, and I just start throwing everything into the cart. And, you know, like just the densest experiences. And so many of them, my soul is like this, this script writer who has like no limits, like, okay, we're going to experience all of these different things. And then there were also things in the cart that I hadn't gotten to in my life yet, like recovery and overcoming and being a teacher and spiritual awakening and just all of these things that seemed really positive and beautiful. And so after they showed me the scene, like it was as if 2 tons of bondage had been released from my body. I was no longer a victim to my circumstance. I was actually a divine co-creator of my experience. Things had no longer happened to me. They had happened for me because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. I understood what was going on and I thanked them for showing me like the very intricate part of my, pre-life plan, and still absolutely refused to go back. And they said, listen, you have not balanced your life yet. You signed up for a mission and you have to complete it.
But God is within you, whatever you call God, higher power, divine mind, divine intelligence, chi, prana, the life force, whatever name you give it, it's within all things and it's within everyone right now. It's just the idea that they keep selling us that your reward is in the afterlife. That's when your reward is. No, God is right now, today, within everyone. So your reward is today. It's just, do you allow it? Do you allow yourself to feel that? Do you allow yourself to expand it? Do you allow what the ancient Egyptians called the Amun-Ra, the invisible presence, the invisible one, or Christians call it the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit? Do you allow that to move through you, to express through you, to be in your divinity while you are embracing your humanity, which I've said for years? Why do bad things happen to good people? That's the most question I get asked more often than anything else. All the years of doing conferences and expos. This is why, because your soul wanted someone to forgive. Your soul, I'm going to say that again. Your soul wanted someone to forgive. Your soul wanted to show that it was powerful enough to love. Your soul wanted to show that it was powerful enough to love, power enough to transcend the situation, powerful enough to transcend the circumstances, powerful enough to show who it really is. That unconditional love, divine being. Of course, we incarnate, we get a body, we get a mind, we get an ego. We forget all of it.
In this life, we've put a veil over us so that we are disconnected from the past lives, so that we can focus ourselves here and then do what we can to develop and grow. One thing, like one strong belief I have about our spirits and our souls is that our souls love challenge because challenge creates expansion, and our soul loves to be challenged and our soul wants to grow. So we are just 100% energy, but that energy will expand. And from my own personal experience, expansion happens at a faster rate the more we're challenged, the more resistance we experience, and the more struggle we go through. I think that's why I've expanded so much in such a short time, because my life has just been filled with one challenge after another. And like I'll meet people and say like, you're wise beyond you're wise beyond your years. And it's just because I think all the things that I've been through and all the kind of the experiences I've had. So the soul wants this expansion so much. And a lot of people ask, why am I here? Like, I don't want to be here. Like, we always think like it's too hard, but the soul loves it, right? It loves Earth, I think, because Earth is one of the places in the galaxy that is one of those like master schools. And we just want to be here for that reason.
Now I feel like there is a part of us that is part of a greater energy, God, source. All these words carry so much different, dogma and beliefs tied to them. So it's hard to find just the right one, but there's a part of us, I feel like, that is a part of something bigger, and we can call it a God. I absolutely do not believe from my experience that I created the oneness that I was in. I would be so incredibly naive to think that, because it was so big. I was just a drop. I was a drop in this oneness. And so because I was a drop, that meant that everybody else was a drop too. But all together, we made this ocean of oneness that was in this void. But I felt very strongly that if any one of those drops didn't exist, then the entire void, God, oneness would not be able to exist. And so we are all, even though we can feel so small and inferior compared to something as big as the idea of a God or this oneness that I was in, even though we can feel so small in comparison, we are absolutely integral. It would be as if a single cog on a gear didn't exist. That gear couldn't work no matter how many cogs there were. It needs every single one of us. And we are all part of this together, which makes us all vitally important and worthy and part of this loving God source oneness that is out there that we're all a part of.
You say that it takes great courage to live the plans you made before you were born.
The term Courageous Souls, the title of the book, is really not a reference to the soul. It's a reference to you and me, the personality that's in the body. And the reason for this is that when our souls plan our lives, they're not in a state of fear. So if you're not experiencing fear, you really don't have an opportunity to be courageous. But when we're here, when we're personalities incarnate in a human body, we very frequently experience fear. And so to follow through on the plans made by our souls, this is really what takes the courage. So it's you and me and everyone listening today. We are the courageous souls.
Right.
And I'm always so happy to share this with people, especially people who have lost loved ones recently. I'm always envious when I hear that somebody went home. I really am. I feel horrible for the people who have lost a loved one, but I'm always happy. I'm so happy and envious about the person who went home because I know where they're going. They're at peace. They're in love in a way that most people can't understand. It's unbelievable. So here was my mother and 2 grandmothers and 2 grandfathers and a lot of aunts and uncles, and they all looked so good and they were all so happy. And they just conveyed to me that, you know, they had been watching over me. My mother had been watching over me my whole life. And, you know, there were some things in the 60s I wasn't so happy that she might have seen, but she didn't care because there's no judgment there. There is no judgment. None whatsoever. That's the second most important, or one of the most important things I learned. God does not judge us. I was there in the heart of God, which is what all of us are. I had returned to the heart of God, and I knew that I was not judged at all. Because God knows when we're down here on earth, playing in these little human play suits. It's sort of like those things we dress our kids in when it's cold, and they're all bundled up, and they have boots, and they have socks, and they have idiot mittens, and hats, and scarves wrapped around their heads, and they're like, you know, they know that that's what it's like, pretending to be a human, which we all decided we would pretend to do. So if one of your kids is all dressed up like that, and you say, here, feel this, doesn't that feel interesting? They can't feel it because they got mittens on. So they make mistakes. They think, oh, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that, and they might guess about what it is because they can't really feel it because they're muffled. And of course, that's how we are as human beings. We're muffled, and we can hear our guidance and from inside and from outside, and we can, try to understand what it's trying to tell us, and we can try to act accordingly, but it's all muffled. So we do our best, and sometimes we don't do so well. Some of those things in the 60s especially. But there's no judgment. There's none whatsoever. My relatives were all just happy to see me. They were so proud of me, and I'm like, well, I haven't done anything. They were proud of me, just just getting up every single morning and trying again, especially on the days when it's been bad. They were so proud of me. What courage it took to do that. What courage it took to be on planet Earth, pretending to be human, pretending to be separate, willingly muffling our connection to all that is, pretending that we're flawed and limited. What courage that takes. They were amazing. And I'm standing there like, well, I've never done anything important. They said, oh, you've done the most important thing that exists. It was wonderful.
Okay, so I'll start at the beginning of what I remember from my pre-life, but even order is difficult because while these memories do have a sequence, they also transcend linear time, and they're all kind of happening all at once right now. They're more like they're alive, they're real now, not just in the past, even though they do feel extremely ancient at the same time. So it's difficult to put an identifier on that. But I remember long ago, before I had ever been physical, coming across a being who had been physical. This being was so beautiful and overflowing with joy and power. And I felt that from him because in those environments, you share what you feel, and who you are is shared with those around you, and it's telepathic exchange that's quite perfect. And so I asked him, my goodness, do you feel the depths of joy that I feel that you feel? And he shared it with me and kind of let me go into it and feel it and dive into it. And I was absolutely amazed. And I said, what did you do? What could you possibly do to become this, to be this, to have this quality of essence or nature? And he shared with me, well, he shared with me several things, but chief among what he shared with me was that he had lived physical lives, and he had had one physical life in particular where he had suffered very deeply for years, for a long period of time. And the way that he chose to meet that experience and the acceptance and the quality of intent, that's the Tom Campbell term that I love, the quality of intent that he brought into his experience there was so beautiful that it had allowed a certain refinement of his being, of what he was. And he also, I asked him, how were you healed? You know, because I could sense how deeply he had been not truly damaged, but damage is the only word I can think of, temporarily damaged through this deep experience of wounding that he had in this physical experience. And he shared with me that he was healed, and I felt the depth of this healing. And I said, I want to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I was just so like moved and inspired. And he said something to the effect of, yeah, that's what they all say. I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
So what you've explained so far implies that people in the realm in which you were living, people who had had physical lives were somewhat rare, because you ran into this guy and it's like, whoa, what happened to you? And it's like, you know, apparently you didn't run into such beings all the time. So is that a true observation?
Yeah, I mean, from the one specific memory that I have, yes, that would be true. We were with many beings at the time, but he shone or shined with a brilliance that was very unique and definitely got my attention. I don't know how frequent it is. I do have a sense that there are far more beings who do not incarnate into physical experiences of separation like this than there are that do. So we are the minority, I would say that, but I wouldn't dare to guess.
And I presume that they couldn't be identified in some geographical or spatial location. It's more a dimensional thing, right? Which doesn't necessarily even overlap with our geography here, in our location as Earth. Is that right?
Yeah, well, so all I can say to that is there is a vibrational geography. So so there are many different reality systems, and the way that we experience them is rather unique, very different depending on the rules of each reality. Most are thought responsive. Earth is much less so. It's still thought responsive, but much slower.
Because it's so dense.
We learn. because it's so dense.
Right.
Yeah, Earth is an extremely dense experience by comparison. So here on Earth, we experience spatial distance. That's one of the root qualities of what we experience here, but that is not a fundamental thing. In fact, distance is an illusion. Physical distance is an illusion. There's not really a physical distance. There's the experience of distance. There's a big difference there. But I don't think I'm going to try to identify how those places are separated, but I would say that there is a vibrational distinction between them that is very unique and potent, and perhaps very unearth-like. I mean, where I was at the moment, I remember coming across this being, I was moving across what I can only describe as like a landscape. I remember a visual experience of being with many, many other beings of light. I perceived all of us as being of light, and this being was with us doing the same thing, but his quality was hard to miss because of what he was energetically.
Interesting. Well, I suppose I won't ask too many questions right now because I want you to continue with your story, but could it be that many of the beings you hung out with had earthly lives, but this guy was a much more highly evolved being among them, and so that's why he shone so brightly?
I'm only speculating. If I try to speak to that, I don't know. I guess it could be, but all I know is I remember that the quality of his nature was significantly, just like breathtakingly beautiful compared to what I had sensed and who we were around us. I mean, if you want to put it in very crude terms, you could say I don't like these terms, but a young soul by comparison, something like that. I mean, we had less experience, at least not in that way. I had not done that before. And I feel that the others that were there in that environment, in that moment, were similar to me, whereas he was dissimilar. But I'm not going to try to speculate on.
That's okay. All right, please get on with your story.
Yeah, sure. So he encouraged me to go talk to my guides, and so I did that. And okay, so then I lived many lives. I don't know how many, but at least in the hundreds. And I went back to him later, and I found him, and I shared with him, see, I'm doing this. I'm in the process of doing this, and he was encouraging.
So between the time you first met him and the time you went back to him later, you actually went through hundreds or 100 earthly lives.
Yes. I don't know if they were earthly. I just know that I was physical.
Incarnate lives somewhere.
Yes, yeah. Some kind of physical incarnate lives.
Okay.
I don't know what they were.
Okay.
So, so then the majority of this pre-birth memory, though, takes place at a time that is somewhat immediately preceding this life, where I had taken a long break. After a previous incarnation, I just decided I was taking a long break, metaphorically like being on a long weekend that you're like not willing to give up, or a vacation where you're just like, I'm not going back to work. I'm not doing that. And I remember this guide coming to me over and over again, like, are you ready to go back yet? Are you ready to go back yet? And putting him off, like, repeatedly, over and over. And eventually he came back, you ready to go back yet? And I said, yes, okay, now I'm ready.
Now, can I just interject again?
Yes.
Are these guides people like you and I who have had earthly lives and now we're doing a stint as guides on the other side? Or are they of some other nature and serving, maybe they haven't even ever been incarnate beings? Or don't you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the answer.
I'm just curious.
I only know, I only know the quality of the nature of the being. Because everything, so when we interact with each other on that side, it's very personal and exposed and true and colorful. And so the nature of the being that you're interacting with is known and felt by you. So I don't know if this being was physical. If I just had to guess, I would say probably they have been physical, but I don't know that.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
No, it's okay. So this being and I reviewed my state, like who I had been, what I was, what I had known, what I had done. And it was kind of like, this is really hard to explain, but it's and this is a very crude metaphor, so please forgive the metaphor, but it's like if you looked at like a bar chart or something, like a vast bar chart, and it was like was obvious the thing that I needed to work on. I don't even like the word work on, but the thing that it would be best for me to engage and integrate and grow through. It was apparent. There were many qualities that I had and that I knew, I understood, that were a part of me, but there was this one area that it was just blatantly obvious. Like there was no like careful discernment needed. It was like it was like right there glaring, like, oh yeah, I really got to do something about that. And that thing, the best way I can describe it was a fear that had overcome me in a previous physical experience. And this fear was so dark and so low vibration. In this previous physical experience, it had led me down a path where I eventually died a physically agonizing death. And I knew after that life that the fear had led me into this place where I experienced much pain. And it had bested me, is the best way to put it. Like I was bested by this certain experiential vantage point, this certain low vibration fear. So I was super excited at the opportunity to re-engage this, because I knew that if I could meet this fear and integrate this experience, if I could do that, the expansion of being, the expansion of who I was, and even the expansion of all that is. So I reviewed all that, and I was super excited. Like, if I could just communicate one emotion that was like the key emotion, it was like incredible excitement. And I felt so deeply honored that I was being given the opportunity to be a human and to play a human life. It was like being given the most precious gift in the universe. There's only so many slots, only so many precious character opportunities. And to be given one of those is like, oh my gosh, it was just like being given the most precious gift in the world.